The hum of conversations and clinking plates filled the upscale cafe where Tom Holland sat, flipping through a script for his next project. Amid the polished surroundings, a quiet sob caught his attention. His gaze drifted to a young waitress standing in the corner, wiping tears from her eyes as she tried to compose herself. Most patrons ignored her, but Tom couldn't look away. What began as simple concern would soon turn into a life-changing journey neither of them could have predicted. Tom couldn't shake the image of the waitress wiping her tears. Her hands trembled as she adjusted her apron, and though she quickly plastered on a forced smile, the sadness in her eyes lingered. She approached a table nearby, taking an order with a voice that was polite, but lacked its usual cheer. Tom watched quietly, unsure of what to do. He had always been someone who cared deeply for others, but he didn't want to overstep. Still, something about her sorrow felt personal, almost as if he could feel her pain. When she brought him his coffee, Tom seized the moment. "Hey," he said softly, his voice filled with genuine concern. "Are you okay?" The waitress froze, clearly caught off guard. Her name tag read Lila, and her smile faltered for just a moment before she nodded. "I'm fine, sir. Thank you for asking." Tom wasn't convinced. "You sure? You seem upset." Lila hesitated, gripping the edge of her tray tightly. "It's nothing," she said quickly. "Just a rough day." Before Tom could press further, she excused herself and disappeared into the kitchen. He frowned, his gut telling him there was more to the story. He decided to wait a little longer, hoping to catch her during a quieter moment. Hours later, as the cafe began to close, Tom noticed Lila leaving through the back door. Her shoulders were slumped, and she carried a small, worn bag that looked like it had seen better days. Something in him couldn't let it go. Tom paid his bill and discreetly followed her at a distance, careful not to make her uncomfortable. She walked with her head down, her pace quick as if she wanted to escape the world around her. As he trailed her through the dimly lit streets, he wondered what could have driven someone so young to such despair. Tom kept his distance as he followed Lila through the quiet streets, his footsteps light and deliberate. He wasn't sure why he was doing this. It wasn't like him to involve himself in a stranger's life, but something about her sadness struck a chord deep within him. He couldn't just walk away. Lila's pace quickened as she turned down a narrow alleyway. Tom hesitated for a moment, glancing around to make sure he wasn't being too conspicuous. The last thing he wanted was to frighten her. Still, his curiosity and concern urged him forward. The alley led to a small, run-down apartment complex. Lila stopped in front of one of the units, fumbling with her keys. Tom ducked behind a corner, peeking out just enough to see her enter the building. A dim light flickered on in the window above, and he felt a pang of guilt for invading her privacy. What now, he thought, leaning against the cold brick wall. He had no plan, no idea what to do next. But as he stood there, the image of her tear-streaked face flashed in his mind. He couldn't leave without knowing she was okay. After a few moments of indecision, Tom walked to the door of her unit and knocked gently. He could hear shuffling from inside, followed by Lila's cautious voice. "Who is it?" "It's, Tom," he said, feeling slightly awkward. "From the cafe." There was a long pause before the door creaked open just enough for her to peek out. Her eyes were puffy, and her expression was a mix of confusion and wariness. "What are you doing here?" Tom scratched the back of his neck, suddenly unsure of how to explain himself. I saw you leave earlier, and you seemed upset. I just wanted to make sure you're okay." Lila blinked, clearly taken aback. "You followed me home?" Tom held up his hands, his voice gentle. "I didn't mean to intrude. I've been where you are, feeling like the weight of the world is on your shoulders. I thought maybe you could use someone to talk to." Her eyes softened, but she still hesitated. Finally, she sighed and opened the door a little wider. "Come in, I guess." Tom stepped inside, his heart heavy as he took in the small, sparsely furnished apartment. The air was thick with the unspoken struggles of someone barely holding on. He turned to Lila, his voice filled with quiet determination. "Tell me what's going on. I want to help." Lila hesitated, the weight of her struggles evident in the way she avoided Tom's gaze. She gestured toward an old, worn-out couch, and Tom sat down carefully, his eyes scanning the tiny apartment. The peeling paint on the walls, the empty shelves, and the second-hand furniture painted a clear picture of hardship. "I don't really know why you're here," Lila began, crossing her arms defensively. "I'm just a waitress trying to get by, People don't usually care. Tom leaned forward, his expression soft but unwavering. I care, he said simply. You don't have to tell me everything, but I can see you're carrying a lot. Sometimes talking helps. Lila sighed and sank into a chair across from him, her fingers nervously twisting the hem of her apron. It's a lot, she admitted quietly. I work double shifts just to keep this place. My mom's sick, and the medical bills. Her voice cracked, and she paused to compose herself. They're drowning me. Tom's chest tightened as he listened. You're doing all this on your own? He asked gently. She nodded. There's no one else. My dad left years ago, and my sister's still in school. It's just me, and some days... Her voice trailed off, and tears filled her eyes. Some days, I don't know if I can keep going. Tom's heart ached at her words. He thought back to his own struggles, the moments in his life when everything felt impossible. He understood the weight of feeling alone in the fight. You're not alone anymore, he said softly. I know it might not mean much coming from a stranger, but I want to help. Lila looked at him, her tear-filled eyes searching his face for any hint of insincerity. Why? She whispered. You don't even know me. Tom smiled faintly. Because everyone deserves a break, and sometimes we need someone to remind us that things can get better. You're working so hard for your family. It's incredible. But you don't have to do it alone. For the first time, Lila's defenses began to lower. She wiped her eyes, a small flicker of hope creeping into her expression. I don't even know where to start, she admitted. Tom leaned back, his mind already racing with possibilities. We'll figure it out together, he said, one step at a time. The air in Lila's apartment felt lighter now, though her struggles still lingered like shadows in the corner. Tom leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees as he spoke. The first thing we need to do is take a little pressure off you. You've been carrying too much on your own. Lila frowned, her instinctive resistance kicking in. I don't need charity, she said quickly. I've gotten this far. Tom held up a hand to gently interrupt her. It's not charity, he said. It's teamwork. You're already doing so much, but sometimes it's okay to let someone lend a hand. Lila hesitated, her pride warring with the exhaustion she couldn't deny. What do you mean? She asked cautiously. Well, Tom began, his voice steady. For starters, I'd like to help with your mom's medical bills. I know it won't solve everything, but it could take some of the weight off your shoulders. Lila's eyes widened, and she shook her head. Tom, that's too much. I can't let you do that. Tom smiled, his expression warm but firm. It's not too much if it helps you breathe a little easier. And this isn't about me swooping in and fixing everything. It's about giving you the space to figure things out without feeling like you're drowning. Lila looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting nervously. She wanted to say no, to hold on to her independence, but the truth was, she needed the help. Finally, she nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. Okay. Tom's smile widened. Good. And while we're at it, let's talk about your job. Double shifts aren't sustainable. Not if you want to be there for your family. Lila sighed, leaning back in her chair. It's not like I have a lot of options. This job is all I've got. Tom's brow furrowed as he considered her words. You're resourceful, he said. You've been holding everything together under impossible circumstances. That takes strength and skill. Maybe we just need to find a way to use those skills in a way that works better for you. Lila tilted her head, her curiosity piqued. What are you suggesting? I don't know yet, Tom admitted with a grin, but I have a feeling you're capable of more than you think. Let's take this one step at a time. Deal? Lila managed a small smile. Deal. For the first time in a long while, Lila felt something other than fear or exhaustion. It was a flicker of hope, a reminder that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to fight this battle alone. Over the next few days, Tom threw himself into helping Lila get back on her feet. He started by quietly covering her mother's most urgent medical bills, ensuring she could receive the care she needed. Lila was reluctant at first, but as she watched her mother finally attend appointments without worry, she felt a deep sense of relief she hadn't experienced in years. One evening, Tom met with Lila after her shift at the cafe. This time, she looked less burdened, though the dark circles under her eyes still spoke of long days and sleepless nights. I've been thinking, Tom said, sliding a piece of paper across the table toward her. It was a list, neatly written in his handwriting. These are local organizations that help people with job placement and skills training. I talked to a couple of them. They'd love to work with you. Lila scanned the list, her brows furrowing. You've been doing all this for me? Tom shrugged, smiling. You've done so much for your family. It's time someone helped you. Lila blinked back tears, her voice shaky. I don't even know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Tom said gently. Just take a look and see if there's something that feels right for you. Lila nodded, clutching the paper tightly. I will. Thank you. Tom leaned back, his expression thoughtful. And one more thing. Do you have any hobbies? Things you're passionate about? Lila hesitated. I used to love painting, she admitted. Before everything happened, I thought maybe I'd make a career out of it, but that feels like a lifetime ago. Tom's eyes lit up. Painting? That's amazing. Why not start again? Lila laughed softly, shaking her head. Tom, I can barely afford groceries. How am I supposed to afford painting supplies? Tom grinned, leaning forward conspiratorially. Leave that to me. The next day, Tom showed up at Lila's apartment with a box of paints, brushes, and canvases. For you, he said, handing her the supplies. No pressure, just a reminder of what you're capable of. Lila stared at the box, her hands trembling. I don't deserve this, she said softly. Yes, you do, Tom said firmly. And you deserve to dream again. The box of paints sat untouched on Lila's kitchen table for 2 days. She would glance at it as she rushed to and from her shifts, her mind swirling with doubts. Could she really start again? Was it even worth trying? But every time she thought about leaving the supplies untouched, she remembered Tom's words. You deserve to dream again. On the third evening, Lila finally took a deep breath and opened the box. The smell of fresh paint stirred memories of a different time, a time when her life felt full of possibility. She cleared a small space in her apartment, propping up a canvas and carefully selecting her first brush. At first, her hand trembled as she made the first stroke, but with each movement, she began to lose herself in the colors. The hours flew by, and for the first time in years, she felt a sense of peace. The next morning, Tom stopped by unannounced, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Thought you could use a caffeine boost, he said with a grin, but his smile widened when he saw the painting on the easel. It was a vibrant piece, filled with swirling shades of blue and gold, evoking a sense of hope and resilience. Lila, he said, his voice filled with awe. This is incredible. Lila blushed, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. It's nothing, she said modestly. Just something I started last night. Tom shook his head. It's not nothing. It's amazing. You've got real talent. Lila smiled, a faint glimmer of pride shining through. I forgot how much I love this. Tom sat down, placing the coffee on the table. Then don't stop. Let's find a way to make this more than just a hobby. What do you mean? Lila asked, her curiosity piqued. I know a few people in the art world, Tom said casually. We could see if any galleries or organizations would showcase your work. It's worth a shot. Lila's eyes widened. Tom, I don't even know where to begin. That's where I come in, Tom said with a wink. You focus on creating, I'll take care of the rest. For the first time in a long while, Lila felt a spark of hope. Painting wasn't just a memory anymore. It was her future. And with Tom's unwavering support, she began to believe that maybe, just maybe, her life could change. Over the next few weeks, Lila threw herself into painting. Every spare moment she had was spent at her small makeshift studio, her brushes gliding across canvases as she poured her heart into her work. The weight of her struggles began to feel lighter, replaced by the joy of creating something that was truly hers. Meanwhile, true to his word, Tom got to work behind the scenes. He reached out to contacts in the art world, gallery owners, curators, and even a few influential friends who shared his passion for supporting undiscovered talent. His excitement for Lila's work was infectious, and soon doors began to open. One afternoon, Tom arrived at Lila's apartment carrying a neatly printed flyer. You might want to sit down for this, he said with a grin, handing her the flyer. Lila read it slowly, her eyes widening with each word. Emerging Artist Showcase, featuring local talent. Her name was listed under the headlining artists. They want to feature me? She asked, her voice a mix of disbelief and excitement. Not just feature you, Tom said, sitting down beside her. They're giving you your own section. Your work deserves to be seen, Lila. Tears welled up in her eyes as she stared at the flyer. I don't know what to say. Tom smiled warmly. Just keep painting. The rest will take care of itself. The days leading up to the showcase were a whirlwind of preparation. Lila carefully selected her best pieces, each one a reflection of her journey, her struggles, her resilience, and her newfound hope. Tom was there every step of the way, offering encouragement and even helping her transport the paintings to the gallery. When the night of the showcase arrived, Lila stood in the center of the gallery, her heart pounding as visitors began to arrive. The space was filled with her work, the vibrant colors and emotional depth drawing people in. Tom watched from a distance, his chest swelling with pride as he saw Lila interacting with guests. They praised her work, asking about her inspirations, and for the first time, Lila spoke about her art with confidence. At the end of the evening, a gallery owner approached her with an offer to represent her work professionally. Lila was speechless, her dreams suddenly within reach. She turned to Tom, who gave her an encouraging nod. Go for it, he said simply. That night, as they walked home together, Lila looked up at Tom, her voice filled with gratitude. You changed my life. Tom shook his head. You changed your life. I just reminded you what you're capable of. Lila's life began to transform in ways she never thought possible. With the gallery's support, her paintings started to gain recognition. Each piece seemed to resonate deeply with buyers, many of whom were drawn to the raw emotion and hope that her art conveyed. Orders began pouring in, and for the first time in years, she could see a path forward, not just for herself, but for her family. One afternoon, while packing up a sold painting to ship to a client, Lila received an unexpected phone call. It was from a local nonprofit organization that supported young artists from underprivileged backgrounds. They had seen her work at the gallery and wanted her to speak at one of their events. Me? Speak? Lila asked, the disbelief evident in her voice. I'm not anyone special. You're more than special, Tom said, overhearing her from across the room. He smiled as he walked over, gently taking the phone from her. She'd love to, he said to the caller, winking at Lila. The event was held at a community center where dozens of aspiring artists gathered to hear Lila's story. Standing on the stage, she felt a wave of nerves, but as she looked out at the eager faces in the audience, she remembered the weight of her own struggles. If her story could inspire even one person, it would be worth it. She took a deep breath and began. A year ago, I was lost. I was working endless shifts, barely making ends meet, and I had given up on my dreams. But someone reminded me that no matter how far you fall, there's always a way back up. Lila shared her journey with raw honesty, from her darkest days to the moment she picked up a paintbrush again. By the end of her speech, the room was silent, every face in the audience captivated by her words. When the applause came, it was thunderous. A few young artists approached her afterward, their voices filled with admiration and hope. Your story made me believe I can do it too, one of them said. As Lila walked off the stage, Tom was waiting for her, his expression filled with pride. See, he said, you didn't just change your life, you're inspiring others now. Lila smiled, her heart full. I wouldn't be here without you. Tom shook his head. You've been here all along. You just needed someone to remind you. Lila's career flourished in the months that followed. Her art began to appear in exhibitions beyond the local gallery, gaining attention from critics and collectors alike. Each piece she created was infused with her journey, the pain, resilience, and newfound hope that had brought her to this point. She was no longer just surviving, she was thriving. With her newfound stability, Lila was finally able to make meaningful changes in her life. She moved her family into a better apartment, ensuring her mother had the care she needed, and her younger sister had the space to focus on her studies. For the first time in years, her home felt like a sanctuary rather than a place weighed down by stress and fear. Tom remained a steady presence in her life, though he often downplayed his role. You don't need me anymore, he joked one evening as they walked through the city after an art show. You've got this. Lila smiled at him, her gratitude shining through. I might not need you in the same way, but I'm always going to be grateful for you, Tom. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Tom shrugged modestly. Everyone needs someone in their corner. As they passed a park, they noticed a young boy sitting on a bench, sketching in a tattered notebook. Lila stopped, her gaze softening. "He reminds me of me," she said quietly. Tom followed her gaze. "Think he could use some encouragement?" Lila nodded, her smile widening. She approached the boy and crouched down to his level. "That's some amazing work you're doing," she said warmly. The boy looked up, surprised but pleased by her compliment. She handed him one of her business cards. "If you ever want advice or need art supplies, let me know." As Lila returned to where Tom was waiting, he smiled knowingly. "You're paying it forward." "It's the least I can do," she said. "If someone hadn't done the same for me, I wouldn't be here." Tom nodded, his voice soft. "That's how the world gets better, one act of kindness at a time." Months later, Lila stood in the middle of a prestigious art gallery, surrounded by her work. The exhibition was her first solo showcase, a testament to the incredible transformation her life had undergone. The room buzzed with excitement as collectors, critics, and fans admired her pieces, each one a story told through color and emotion. Tom arrived halfway through the evening, dressed casually as always, trying to blend into the crowd. But Lila spotted him immediately and made her way over, a radiant smile on her face. "You made it," she said, her voice warm. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," Tom replied, looking around at the stunning artwork on display. "This is amazing, Lila. You've come so far." She glanced around the gallery, taking in the sight of her paintings adorning the walls. "I still can't believe this is real," she admitted, "but it feels right, like this is where I was meant to be." Tom nodded, his smile full of pride. "That's because it is. You worked for this, and you deserve every bit of it." As the evening went on, Lila received an overwhelming amount of praise and even a few offers for future collaborations. By the time the crowd began to thin out, she felt an immense sense of accomplishment and gratitude. When the gallery finally closed its doors for the night, Lila and Tom stepped outside, the cool evening air wrapping around them. Lila turned to him, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "You know, none of this would have happened if you hadn't stopped to ask if I was okay that day." Tom smiled, shaking his head. "I just gave you a nudge, the rest. You did that. You proved to the world and to yourself that you're capable of incredible things." Lila laughed softly, her gaze drifting up to the stars. "Still, thank you for everything." Tom placed a hand on her shoulder, his expression serious but kind. "The best way you can thank me is by doing what you're already doing, helping others the way someone helped you. Keep being that light, Lila." She nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "I will." As they walked away from the gallery, Lila felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. She had gone from a struggling waitress to a celebrated artist, but more importantly, she had found purpose. And with Tom's unwavering kindness and support, she had learned that even the smallest acts of compassion could lead to life-changing transformations. This story reminds us that a single moment of kindness can change a life. Have you ever witnessed or experienced an act of compassion that made all the difference? Share your story in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for more inspiring tales.